you doing?
Yeah, good.
Hi
Thank you,
Dave.
Dave.
Hi Robin. Good, thanks, and yourself?
And it's great that
Good.
actually Cape Town people on the call today.
Good. I got rid of the Joe burger. That was my
Yeah,
goal.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
As we come live and as people join us, I wanted to just do a bit of our formalities. So for those of you guys who are here for the first time, Robin and Andrew and myself were live 2 weeks ago talking about Airbnb. This week we wanted to get Ridhwaan on. Sorry, Ridhwaan's that way. To talk about what's happening in the market, how his portfolio has grown over time. So that's up. If you guys have questions about Airbnb, what's happening in the market, if you're worried about the market, that's a good time to start talking about it here, because we've got some experts on who can definitely address your concerns. Um, Otherwise, I think we want to get straight into it. Use the chat box. Let us know that you're here. Let us know if you have any questions. But for the most part, I think we're good. Just as some formalities for people who might be joining for the first time, Robert, do you want to give us a quick introduction about who you are and what you're doing, and then we'll go over to Ridhwaan.
Great. And Dave, I think also said in the context. 2 weeks ago we were on a similar call. We're again here today, and we really want to answer the questions that our audience are asking, because Airbnb is one of the fastest growing investment strategies, and actually is now an asset class, which is amazing. Like before, this kind of short-term rental wasn't classified as a formal kind of asset class, and we're actually seeing it is now. We see the REITs starting to become interested in it. We're seeing change, and we want to really provide you, the listener, with information that can support you in making an informed decision and not to miss out on this amazing opportunity. Like I got into Airbnb 6-7 years ago, kind of by accident, but then when I realized how to unlock it, it just changed the game for me, right? And obviously the same with Ridhwaan, who's also started recently, and he's going to tell his story. So this is really the opportunity for us to answer the questions, because we found that there was something lacking for a lot of people who are listening, or who know a little about Airbnb. They just don't have enough to actually take the next step and to actually get into it and do it. And this is one of those things that you want to get in as soon as possible, because it's such growing phenomena that you want to be in edge of this, so that you can outperform and compete your competition. And I think that's what we're going to focus on today. From my side, started Airbnb investing specifically 5-6 years ago, but have been a property investor for many years, ranging from the higher end rent to market in the rentals in High Bay and Cape Town, through to offshore investing, through to some commercial, through to a school property. So a whole range of different things. And really that is my focus. And it was also great to win that 2018-2019 Investor of the Year award. And that just shows that what we're doing here are smart strategies, are profitable strategies, and of course we're sharing it so that everyone else can actually benefit from that as well. So that's it from my side. I think definitely Ridhwaan's side, we know that he was also the winner of the Innovative Award for the Investor of the Year. So Ridhwaan, share part of your story of how you got to where you are.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Dave. So I started investing in property less than a year and a half ago. So I only started with my property investment journey in October 2020, in the middle of COVID. And I decided to jump in on the deep end. And I went with the more advanced or so-called advanced strategy of Airbnb. Right. I got my education down. I did the advanced Airbnb course through the Property Academy, and that taught me what I needed to know to get started. As I mentioned, I started in October 2020 with Airbnb, knew nothing, started with nothing. And at the moment, I now have 7 Airbnb units. I also have a student accommodation that I'm busy filling up. And I've just received a signed OTP for my next property. I received that yesterday. And all of this expansion and growth was funded by me starting with Airbnb. I also started Airbnb in the middle of COVID. We had some hard lockdowns, and people were always skeptical about Airbnb and thought that it was completely dead once COVID hit, and that just wasn't the case. I took the risk, and I made it work. And through that, as Robin mentioned, I won last year's Investor of the Year Innovative Category Award, and that was thanks to my first Airbnb unit. And yes, it's definitely a strategy that I recommend to anyone of any level. If I can do it, so can you.
And Ridhwaan, I mean, if I just jump in here as well, I mean, you're famous within our organization for being, the guy who's from hospital talks about generating income and profit from Airbnb. So not only did you start during COVID, which totally destroyed a lot of Airbnb people around the world, but for us in the in the Sapling Group and the Property Academy, we actually still did well because we knew what the strategies were and the techniques to do to adapt, right, and to pivot. But everyone knows your story of you actually being in hospital in the intensive care unit and still generating profits because it was automated, and of course you had set it up right. So it's not just about COVID that you started in, but the worst of COVID actually really impacted you because you actually really were at death's door. 8 days intensive care, 30 days in hospital, that's not a short amount of time. And for people listening here, they're going to say to us, oh, Airbnb is so much hard work. It's like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's just so much easier from what I'm doing. Well, then just go and look at how much time you had to do your Airbnb management, right? Because obviously in intensive care, you're not allowed cell phones. You're not allowed a whole lot of that kind of stuff either, right? So anything you want to add there about what that experience has given you as an insight also into property investing? Because I know you came out of hospital and your mindset had changed. And we see that in the action that you're taking. You're not waiting for things to happen. So share a bit more about how that's really actually accelerated your property growth.
Yes, so definitely I spent a month in hospital. I was in the intensive care unit for 8 days. Couldn't walk when I came out. Lots of horror stories from that. But as you mentioned, some good did come out of it. I had a mindset change. So let's first speak about the actual running of the Airbnb while I was in hospital. It was very simple because all the hard work had done before at the start, right? And that's exactly what the course taught me to do. I implemented those strategies. I had my automations in place, and bookings and cleaning and the turnover of guests went smoothly without me having to do, or not without me having to do, without me being able to do anything, right? And then when you are at death's door, as you said, it does put things into perspective. It does change a lot of things. As a young person, you don't think of death reaching you. It's just, even though it is a possibility, it's not a thought of yours. But when you have a brush with death, as I have, it puts things into perspective, and it changes your mindset. And I think that's been key to a lot of my growth. It helped me accelerate and grow faster with that mindset shift. And then, a year later I did things differently. I was also out of Cape Town for 2 weeks. I was in Johannesburg visiting family, and then went on a family holiday to Zimbabwe, in KZN. So I was gone for over 2 weeks, and again, my Airbnbs ran smoothly because of the automations that I had in place, and even at scale, with a lot more units now, it still ran without me having to do much.
So actually, let's just open it up just a tad, because I think some people don't realize what this actually can do when we're talking about freeing up time and actually giving cash flow. So, this is one of those few investing opportunities that someone can actually literally start maybe a week after learning some skills and actually start generating a certain amount of cash flow. Now, in the traditional real estate investing, if we're going to buy property, then obviously let it for a long-term market. You're kind of lucky in South Africa if you're breaking even, right? Now, many of us here on the call, we all know that we want more than just breaking even. We want positive cash flow. But that is also a challenge in South Africa. You have to know the right deals or where they are, set it up correctly. But here in Airbnb, we're talking about not having to put a lot of money down, because maybe you're going to just put down, an amount of money for a rental, because we're going to rent a unit and then sublet it in Airbnb, all legally and legit, right? We're not trying to go behind the landlord's back. But you actually could be generating a certain amount of cash literally within that month that you're starting, which is quite difficult to do with any other form of investing. So when someone comes and says, well, I don't have a lot of money, I mean, right? I mean, you started off because you couldn't go out there and buy a property. And even if you could, you still wouldn't necessarily have a whole lot of cash to go and now travel or do other things with it. So I know you and I chatted just last night at one of the premier events, and I was sharing with you what my plans are for the rest of this year. And you were like, yep, you're on track for you to go and do that, because that's exactly what we're talking about. Some of the models that we use in Airbnb are actually about giving you cash in your pocket so that you can actually go and do something with it. Not about, well, I'm going to build up my portfolio and hopefully in 15 years we'll have enough cash to go and do something. It actually can start to happen, really quickly. So that just, gives them an insight for those who don't know what we're talking about with the Airbnb model. Dave, I just want to check. We got some questions coming through. Anything there that 100%. We should jump into right away?
Yeah, I think we can get into some questions over here. Does areas of poll? Okay, so a little bit hard to understand the question exactly. But maybe put your perspective, gents, on Paarl winelands for the Airbnb market. I know Ridhwaan and I were talking about the Helderberg area last night. I'm not too sold on Paarl. Maybe you guys have some different opinions.
So I will say this: the course teaches you how to analyze different areas and different properties. So it's very difficult to just say for some areas yes or no. Obviously, you have the areas that stand out, like along the Atlantic seaboard of Cape Town. Most of those areas work, but for some of the other areas, sometimes you think it would be a good opportunity and it's not, and sometimes you think, oh, Airbnb would never work there, and then it actually does. So I would say using the tools that the course gives you to analyze and do your analysis really helps, and that will help you determine whether it's lucrative or not.
Yeah, I mean, we always want to take out a lot of the guesswork. We know that successful property investing is not about just sucking your thumb and hoping. So, there are tools out there that we can use to check, like a current market analysis, to actually check, would Airbnb generate some sufficient and good income here? And you can actually do some really fairly accurate calculations on that. So very much so. And, talking about Paarl, we're talking about the winelands. I mean, just consider how many Cape Townians love their wine, love wine trips, struggle with driving if they go to the vineyards and the wine farms. So everyone's looking for a getaway. I'm leaving tomorrow to go into the mountains to go to Suicide Gorge, and we're going to stay out just outside the Trabo area. So that people love going away. So I think it's a great opportunity. But like I said, and Ridhwaan said, use the skills and the tools to actually find out and validate what you're doing, as opposed to just hoping. I mean, that's not going to be a good strategy for success, is just hoping. So yeah, do the work.
Yeah. I think also from my side, it's really important that you go out and see what else is there. See the competition. If you're going to go into the Airbnb market in Franschhoek, for an example, go and stay in some Airbnbs in the area, scope them out, so you understand what the market climate looks like, so you can position yourself in the correct way. We spoke about it 2 weeks ago, Robin, about going into markets where there isn't an established Airbnb market. We're not here to set markets. We're not here to create trends. We're here to beat the competition. That's what we're about. We're not going to go and try and get a new market going up in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I think, Dave, I actually just want to add on to that, because you're right there. When some people look and they see, like, for example, here in the Atlantic seaboard or wherever, even, I mean, obviously we're in Cape Town, but let's say Durban, in the North Beach, South Beach, there's certain areas where there are lots of Airbnbs. I kind of get excited about that, because it means there's a demand. So for people listening, don't be afraid if you've seen there's so many Airbnbs and then you're like, oh my word, how am I going to compete against them? Well, that's exactly what we're teaching them, is teaching you how to actually outcompete your people. Remember, we just need to be better than them and we'll make it work. And the thing about South Africa is we are so slow in understanding how to market our things and how to automate our things that actually it's easy for us to dominate our competition. That's why Ridhwaan is enabling just to actually, outcompete his competition literally after 3 weeks. It's not like he's had to learn 3 years of hard work and sweat to finally meet a certain level. All he had to do was implement what he had learned, and I taught him in the course, and suddenly he's listed first. 3 weeks into his own listings. I mean, come on, where does that happen where you can actually like come up first on Airbnb's page? Well, that's exactly what we're teaching them, right?
Yeah, and that's it. It's also fundamentals that you can go and apply across the market. So it's not like you've got a completely different tool, different strategy from one market to the other. The fundamentals are the fundamentals. So that's always good to see. The question coming in, again, something we discussed last night at the networking event. Sorry for those of you who didn't make it. In terms of, obviously, we come into service accommodation, so we want to provide a furnished unit, well set up. Are there any options in the market to help you with the furnishing? Is it just going out there and buying the furniture and the fittings, or are we focused on renting properties that are already furnished? What's the goal over here for you guys?
So I'm going to pass this on to Ridhwaan because I know that he has come up with innovative and creative solutions for dealing with these kinds of things. So I'll let him start, and then I'll add in if there's anything else that I can add to that.
Okay, so there are a few options. My first prize is to find, and again, this is taught in the course, is to find a fully furnished unit um, to the correct standard, right? So it's pointless getting a furnished unit where the decor doesn't work at all, creating the ambience that you wanted to, and you have to buy new furniture anyway. So that would be that's first prize. You can obviously, if you have some cash available, buy some furniture, either brand new or secondhand. There are furniture rental options. There are store accounts that you can use to apply for finance to finance the furniture, and it becomes part of your monthly cash flow expense. Yeah, there are other companies that allow you to set up accounts to rent for certain periods and then own it at the end of the term. And these are all the options that I've looked at. And also using some of these options, you can also get third party finance from your network, right? You never know who you actually know until you ask and approach people. So I've actually managed to to furnish some of my units using angel finance. So I found very good Airbnb units, put together a case with projections and financials, passed it on to some investors, and they were happy to, for a certain return, give me angel finance, and that's how I furnished two of my units. I got all my furniture that I needed, while still making very good positive cash flow each month, and the investor is receiving a return that they are very happy with. And these are all the options that I've looked at. I'm not sure uh, if I've missed something or there's anything else that Robin can add.
Well, I was actually just waiting for that last one that you shared because that's exactly what I wanted. It's like some people just don't understand that this is like you didn't put money down. You borrowed as not like necessarily from your mom and dad and begging, and it's like you went out as a business proposal and got investors who said this makes sense. I believe that you can actually repay this loan back, and that's exactly what you did. So again, for these people out there who say like, oh, I just don't have capital to start investing, it's not a lot of money that you have said. You can actually, you got funds to prepay some of your rentals 6 months in advance. So it wasn't even, I'm just going to scrape through every month. You actually came in and said, you know what, I'm actually going to pay a whole lot of money up front. So therefore, you're secured as a landlord and you got the furniture. And of course, you made a great case study. And of course, that's what comes when, you use your brain and actually make something work. So I think those are definitely the biggest options. What I always like to do as well, if I'm having to furnish, is I always have in the back of my mind, is this furniture that I'd like to have eventually at the end of my Airbnb cycle in that unit, because you're getting your business called Airbnb to buy the furniture that when it's finished, I might be able to keep for myself because I really like it and it's worthwhile. So I always have that in the back of my mind as well, as like, would this be something that I would like to have in my own house as well at some point? So that's definitely there. And I think, Dave, that's a great segue into one of the other questions I see, and it comes up again and again. And that's about how do we convince landlords to rent their units to us? And I cover this extensively in the course because it's a game changer when you get it. And what I mean by when you get it is not just understanding what you need to say to the landlord, but it's the confidence that you say it with that is actually the convincing element. if you're there unsure about how this is going to benefit the landlord and what you're talking about, then the landlord's going to realize that you're not quite on top of your game. I'm not sure about this. But they're looking for confidence, because ultimately at the end of the day, they're saying, if I'm going to rent you my unit, I want to know that you're going to be able to pay the rent. And they're going to be worried about damage. And they're going to be worried about all these strange people in their apartment and all those things. And every one of these points we cover extensively, but I think a lot of people don't go out and practice. And I'm actually talking about practicing. You call up a friend and you say, I want to role play this till I can get it right. I mean, we're talking about, actors who act in movies, how much they practice their lines. If your future wealth or your future holidays or your children's education depends on you getting more income and more profits, then put a few hours into actually practicing how to convince a landlord so that it rolls off your tongue and you can actually increase your portfolio. For all these people who say it can't be done, Ridhwaan has just shown that in tough times, he's doing it. And it's because he practiced and he actually really got it at a fundamental level. And one of those things, what we're just chatting about, is if your landlord is worried about you being able to pay the rent, then offer, I'll pay it 6 months up in advance and roll it from then on. So I'll give you 6 months in advance and I'll still pay you then every month. And then when it terminates, you can then give me back my 6 months advance. In that way, the landlord would have 6 months buffer in case Airbnb collapsed or in case you didn't get enough bookings to actually put it through. You can do 2 months, 4 months, 6 months. Ridhwaan, I think, did 6 months advance for his first one. And he actually negotiated a discounted price, a discounted rental for paying 6 months in advance. So he actually scored, right? If I'm not mistaken, you actually now sorting out a 2-year lease with someone at reduced rates. Is that right, Ridhwaan?
So the very first rental that I got, so also just to put it out there, I did the course in a weekend, and then in that week, following the weekend, I had my unit secured. So it really is possible to do that. What Robin is saying, this is a strategy that you can learn and implement immediately. So I, for that first one, took out a 6 month, took a 6 month lease with the landlord and paid the 6 months upfront. And believe it or not, so that was for a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom beachfront apartment in Camps Bay. And I think I was paying 14,800 Rand rental. For those of you that don't know, those types of apartments usually rent for about 30 grand plus. I've also now negotiated for that same unit a 3-year lease at a reduced rental as well. So it definitely is possible. And again, something that the course teaches you is ways to keep your landlord happy. That's exactly what I've done over this past 1.5 years. And now I'm reaping the benefits in that I have their trust and it's a lot easier to negotiate from here.
Yeah. And sorry, Dave, go for it.
No, I just wanted to weigh in there. It's the same with any time we are going into negotiation, going into these sales. It's a matter of coming to it with confidence, a matter of coming to it with solutions to problems that the landlord's going to have. Because if you can go and tell the landlord, this is the 5 ways I'm going to solve the problems, then they're going to know, okay, cool, you've already done this. You understand what problems I'm going to have. You understand my concerns going into this, which immediately escalates your ability to have that negotiation. Because you're not coming in there being like, oh, I don't know, I guess I'll figure it out. So you're saying, I've already got that solved. It's done.
Yep. Last night at the premier event where we were all meeting with the other investors from Cape Town, I overheard one of the participants sharing their challenge in convincing a landlord to do the rent-to-rent. And she was saying that the landlord wasn't sure that Airbnb was actually going to generate enough income in the month. And I'm like, the answer that she should have actually answered the landlord with, which is, I am your tenant, not Airbnb. I'm your tenant and I'm paying you the rent as per our lease contract. And I therefore stand surety and I'm going to be the one that sorts it out. How I sort out Airbnb is a different matter. If Airbnb doesn't cover the rent that month, I still pay you what you needing to get according to our lease. And in that way, that solves that issue, right? Because it's me who is the tenant and I'm the long-term tenant with the landlord, not Airbnb. It's just It's a different way of answering something. And in that way, again, the landlord can, can actually start to understand that Airbnb has nothing to do with actually this transaction. It's all to do with me, the person. So if there's damage, I'm liable for the damage because I'm the tenant. And of course, for many people, a lot of landlords don't actually know in South Africa that there's $1 million insurance that Airbnb will pay out for every booking, not every listing, not every unit, but for every booking. And that includes things like if walls are damaged, roofs are damaged because of obviously an Airbnb guest, through to linen, through to crockery, tables, microwaves, whatever it is, that insurance covers that, which basically means that if anything, Airbnb is a better option for a landlord than a traditional rental person who that insurance probably isn't going to cover. So there are a whole lot of benefits to the landlord in subletting to or in renting to you as the tenant that just aren't aware of. And if you know how to just unpack that and actually show that this is going to be more beneficial, you would be surprised that the landlord actually, as Ridhwaan says, will come and say, you know what, I've actually got other apartments. Do you want to take those as well? And so you're naturally expanding, right? So that's the exciting thing.
Yeah. One of my approaches here has also been to alleviate the landlords, because a lot of the landlords I've worked with are guys who are leaving the country, they're moving. So I'm like, look, let me take care of rates, taxes, levies. You get paid every month, money into your bank account. You don't have to think about anything else from this property. Maybe you have a bond you have to take care of, but all of the other stuff I get to manage, and it takes that load off their shoulders. And if they're the kind of landlord that's wanting that, then it's the kind of solution that no one else in the market provides. And that's that peace of mind of I'm your tenant, I will pay you 4 months, 6 months, however much it is up front, as well as take care of some of the logistics, as well as I'm a professional tenant. I'm not going to come and leave you a scratched apartment. If there's a problem with this apartment, I'm going to get it fixed. It's in my interest to keep the apartment maintained, because if you got a bad toilet, it's my ratings that go down and I get affected. So I'm going to take care of that take better care of your apartment than any other tenants you'll have.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's it, right?
Yeah.
And if you get that, then the landlord says, wow, actually, that's true. And then, of course, they're way happier. Good.
Yeah.
Any other questions at this moment that come up?
There isn't. So maybe we wanted to talk a little bit more about the course. What do you cover in the course? How long should it take? I know Ridhwaan says he did it in a weekend. Maybe that's a little bit aggressive for some people. Maybe we're going to run through the course.
Well, yeah, so I'll just actually put the context, and it'd be actually interesting to hear Ridhwaan's perspective from it as well. But at a fundamental level, there are two things that we're talking about here. We're talking and answering your questions right now so that you can make informed decisions about Airbnb. And of course, we're sharing information about the course because there's no ways that we can share everything just in this moment that you would need to have. I mean, there is so much around messaging, the automation, how to choose your cleaners, how to create contracts with your cleaners, how to do your linen, what linen you should choose, how do you do a listing, all those things that put you out in front. And of course, that's a really easy course to go through, right? So that's part of what we're talking about. But the real fundamental of it is that you become the authority in your market, because you're going to be doing stuff that not many other South Africans do. And that is through the automation, because we want to streamline it, make it totally efficient for you, so that whether you have one unit and you want to totally just crush that because it's an apartment in your house, or it's a old domestic quarters that you actually want to convert, or whether, like Ridhwaan, you actually want to scale this, whether it's in your neighborhood or whether it's a plane ride away, it's the same fundamentals, right? And as Ridhwaan says, he did it in a weekend, and a week later he had his first unit. It is there. It is possible. This isn't something which you have to learn again and again, because like we say with these courses, Dave, they have lifetime access. You can come back to it again. We update it. We're updating it now with a whole lot of the gadgets that we're using, which just streamline a whole lot of different things. We chatted about some of those gadgets last week or 2 weeks ago. So it really is something which empowers you to actually take those steps in an informed way. So I'm going to throw it out to Ridhwaan again. Until we get some more questions, what did you take out of the course that for you actually enabled you to take action and make money?
So there's quite a few things. I think the biggest things for me was the landlord script. So that gave me all the points that I needed to know to convince the landlord of my strategy. And as both you and Dave mentioned, I was able to go into the negotiation confidently because I knew exactly what I needed to bring up and what I was talking about. So that was the biggest resource that I used to secure the unit. And then in terms of running the unit, the automation is by far the standout for me, because it enables me to live the life that I want to live. It frees up my time and allows me to do whatever I want, whenever I want to, because I don't have to go in and check on certain things. And the only time that I do go to the unit is when I want to spend a few nights in a luxury apartment, and just make sure that everything is running smoothly, and then head off again. So I think those are the two standout things for me in the course.
Yeah, go and check your nice villa and call it, I'm doing an inspection of my villa for a weekend, right?
That's tax deductible, right?
And Dave, I'm just looking at some of the comments that we've got here, and I see some of the people who are obviously on the call as such, have actually done the course as well. I remember Vaughan there, him when he got his first unit. He sent me these photos. Look what I got. I managed to, make it work. We see Julia as well. That's on here. She's now on I think her second one. She's listing today, if I'm not mistaken.
Nice.
We get these messages from people who are making a difference, who actually are either house hacking, and house hacking we mean is they're converted some part of their house into an Airbnb unit of some sort, and it's paying for a significant amount of their bond or their rental, or it's just extra income. Or of course, with some, they're actually doing the rent-to-rent strategy, and of course, all the buy to Airbnb strategy, where they're actually buying a unit like I've also done, and actually then the Airbnb is paying for that whole, all the financing, the expenses and everything. So it makes me wonder, it's like, if people who are successful are actually here because they know that it works, then it actually really demonstrates again that, for those that are still wondering, you need to be doing something about it.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the nice things that I like about the rent-to-rent Airbnb strategy is a lot of people come to us and say, I don't have affordability, I don't have cash flow, I don't have income, so I can't get a bond. And Ridhwaan, maybe you can talk about this as well, but you can take that income from your Airbnb, put it through a company, pay yourself a salary, and then you've got bank affordability, which means you can then look at buying that property. Or if you're running your Airbnb through your company can prove affordability a few years down the line and start buying assets in its own capacity. And that's really the nice thing here. So the people who are sitting there saying, I don't have any affordability anymore, it's an option to get into that market. And at the end of the day, most of us need the cash flow more than we need a bunch of money lying around in a property. So the cash flow is really that immediate pain that can be solved. It's really good.
So if we can actually just expand on that, Dave, because I think you've mentioned something, but it might just go over quite a few people's heads around when you're talking about you using your Airbnb income to improve or increase your affordability. So now that you can go and buy something, I think it's worthwhile just unpacking that a little bit, right? Because that if you get that, then suddenly you're realizing, like Ridhwaan is that a year and a half ago, no bank would consider him as someone to lend money to, because they're like, you're not earning enough, it's not there. And now they're saying, hey, actually, we can see you've got some good income coming in. So, hey, we want to offer you some loans. So that meant that he would either have to start a new job, and if he's already got one, that's going to be difficult, or he's going to have to do a side hustle, which is going to have to be really worthwhile to actually change his affordability, or he's going to have to do something that's really going to make a difference. And then this is what we're referring to is, you can use your Airbnb income to increase your monthly income. And the banks do consider Airbnb income as a legitimate income, right? That can be contributed to your overall income. And that's what they determine your income for assessing whether you can actually go and now buy property, or that they'll give you a loan. Now, there are some strategies that you can do to even increase that more. In other words, the chance of getting that loan. Because one of the challenges of Airbnb is you're getting like streams of income coming in, 2,000 Rand, 5,000 Rand, 10,000 Rand, depending on the booking, right? Because Airbnb pays you literally the day that someone checks in, they're going to say, here is the money for that booking, which can be challenging if a bank says, well, we want to see consistent income, which is why they love salaried people. They love people who are going to get the same 25,000 Rand every month, because for the banks, they say this is stable and secure. So the other option that you can do is you can actually get your Airbnb income deposited into any old bank account that you that you have, call it a rental account, call it an Airbnb account. And then from that, every month you transfer the same amount, whether it's 15,000 that you've calculated, into your personal current account. And therefore you can actually say, look, here is consistent income from a rental property that I manage, which is totally true as well. So suddenly we're actually generating and using something which you could never do before. And actually, like I said, you can now actually use this to increase your portfolio. So it really does make a legitimate argument for doing something like this, right?
100%.
I saw some other questions coming through. Can we jump into them?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few now, so we can try to hit some of them fairly quickly. I'll start from the bottom. We talked about Airbnb has $1 million insurance per listing. Sorry, not per listing, per booking. So how does that process work? Have either of you claimed from the insurance before, and was it viable?
I know Ridhwaan hasn't. I'm going to leave that with him. I think my one is just, when I did the course for me was live. It was as it happened. I said, if I'm going to show people how to do this, I need to start a new listing and get a new apartment and build it up, proving to you that from day one it's working, show you that it's listed first. And in that, there were some serious damages and a party that trashed the place. And I show you that. I say, look at the message I got from the cleaners. And I recorded myself lodging this complaint with the guest through Airbnb, and literally I think it was 15 or 20 minutes later, Airbnb came back and refunded me the amount that I was claiming for, regardless of whether the guest admitted fault or not. Airbnb went and said, that's right, we will cover that. So it takes a whole lot off. Now Ridhwaan, I know, has also had some experience. I think doors as well were damaged. Ridhwaan, is that correct?
Yeah, so I had some doors damaged and other things damaged. And I filed a claim through Airbnb. The one I did, it was a while ago, and the policy has since changed. I think it's called air cover now, is what they call the insurance, and it's actually made it a lot easier than before to claim through Airbnb. They've extended, the amount of days that you have to submit a claim. And they've increased cover and added cover for certain things. So it's a lot easier to file for the air cover claim now, and everything is done through the Airbnb platform. And yes, they guide you and tell you exactly what it is that you need to do for your specific claim.
Awesome.
Even things like if they've been extra dirty and your cleaners charge you extra for a deep clean, then that can also cover it. Even if someone smoked in your apartment and it's a non-smoking apartment and now you have to repaint the apartment or do a deep clean to get the smell of smoke out, they'll cover that. If something's damaged and therefore you can't accept the next guest, they will pay you for the income that next guest would have brought in, because obviously you've had to now cancel that that guest booking because obviously it's damaged, right? So they've really thought through a whole lot of different things. And if you actually just think about that, like where else will you kind of get that kind of security and insurance coming through that is literally, so quick and instantaneous in that? So again, it's a really good model, right?
Yeah, it's not just for show. It's there for a legitimate reason, and it's used by landlords around the world, which is always good.
Yeah.
Okay, to clarify this, none of us are tax experts, so take the advice with a pinch of salt. Maybe your guys, in your experience, are you doing it in personal capacity or are you running through companies?
Through companies. I'm doing it through companies. And I'll tell you why, but as Dave said, I'm not a tax practitioner. So I do, because I have multiple Airbnb units, I want to keep my income coming through under 1 million, so that I don't have to register for VAT, because then you'd have to charge VAT on top of for each booking that you receive. So if you do everything through your personal name and you reach that 1 million, you're going to have to be charging VAT. You can't also just start companies and you are the only shareholder and director of each one and expect to get away with it as well. There are certain things that you need to do, and I would recommend speaking to a tax specialist. But just in terms of limited liability and VAT and other things like that, I would definitely recommend doing it in a structure like a company.
Yeah. So agreed on all the different aspects. So Ridhwaan has learned well in those things and obviously spoken to the right people. From my side, I also have, for example, a property which I bought in a company, and then I rent it from the company for a certain amount that covers all the expenses. And then, of course, I can also then retain the profit so that I can use that in my personal name for affordability and a whole lot of other different things. So again, there's a variety of reasons, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's it, guys. Make sure you're getting the right advice. But generally, rule of thumb is we want income in companies. It's just a lot safer to manage it that way. Cool.
And also,
Quite
I
a few.
think company tax was reduced yesterday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Next week Tuesday gets reduced, I think, officially. But yeah, there was it was announced yesterday that we'll have that sort of reduction in company and corporations tax, which is always good. Airbnb markets. Are you guys pro or con? Do you like it?
In
Joburg.
Joburg.
Sorry, Joburg. Sorry. Are we happy with the Joburg market?
Yeah, I mean, well, I have to travel. When I travel, I use Airbnb. Joburg's a great Airbnb market for a whole lot of different reasons, for travel, through events, hospitals, sport events, quite a range of things. But again, as Ridhwaan would probably also say, go and do the numbers. Actually do the research. Don't just guess. There's ways in which you can figure that out.
Yeah, again, I would say do the analysis. But I have the same view. I mean, I went up for a Sappin event, and I stayed in an Airbnb, not the hotel. I think Dave stays in Airbnbs quite a bit when he's in Joburg as
Exclusively.
well. So yeah.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's not just about tourists either. We're seeing a big push in Cape Town for sort of workationists. People coming here want to live in Cape Town for 3 months and work from here, but live in an Airbnb. So it's not just people on vacation; it's business trips. So Joburg works very well. I would maybe second guess a Bloom Airbnb or something in the middle of the bush. That's when you start to worry about demand. But if it's a busy area with lots of people, like near Rosebank or Cape Town CBD, there's almost always demand for people looking for places to stay.
I think Cape Town has over 21,000 Airbnb listings at the moment, if I'm not mistaken, from like a year or two ago. I mean, that's a fair chunk of listings.
Yeah.
I think
And
also the person who generated the second most amount of money through Airbnb in the world is from Cape Town as well.
Hey, you mustn't tell our secrets.
Okay, cool. Maybe two more questions I think we can take just in the interest of time. One formality about the course real quick. Well, I'll quickly just share the link again. The link will be in the chat box. In terms of the course, it's entirely online, but Robin, do you want to maybe speak a little more about the formats, what sort of content's in there? I know we've got some practical tools for them to use, which is always good.
Yeah, for me, online courses, regardless of what they are, should be one, informative, educational, and fun. So there's always a story to it, right? There should be some way that you're actually learning through, appreciating what you're seeing, and it must make sense. It must make you realize that I can do this too. And that's exactly how it was created. It's set up in a way that you can go through it methodically, or you can dip into it where you need to get the information or to update yourself on that. And it's catering for whether you're just a one Airbnb person in your own home, or whether you've got an investment apartment that you want to consider Airbnb, or whether you're hungry and you're driven like Ridhwaan to actually expand this and automate it so that actually it can really be literally limitless, right? Just keep expanding that whole process. So it's all of those above. As to practicals, it's always going to depend on what you do with information. If you're not going to implement what you've learned, then it's as if you don't even know it in the first place. So it's driven through that whole perspective. And I think at the end of the day, what you should be left with, which is how I've designed it, is you should be left with, I can do this, because I'm showing you how it can be done step by step and giving you examples of people like Ridhwaan and people in Durban and people in Joburg that have done it themselves just by using the course. That convinces you that actually this is something that you can do and is available to anyone.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks, Robin. So, Ridhwaan, the next question is directed at you, but of course we can just weigh in it. It's a bit of a long one, but what would you say to the rest of us who want to pursue a career in property, specifically is from an Airbnb context that this will be good. Do we need accounting skills? What other additional accreditation is required to run this, where SARS won't be giving us a hard time? Yeah, that should be it for that question.
Okay. I get this question a lot, especially after people have heard my story. And my answer is the same most of the time. Just start. That's what I think. That's what I did, and that's how I managed to get where I am. If you don't start, so Robin always says, knowing without doing is the same as not knowing at all, right? So get started. You might knock your head a few times, but you'll learn a lot faster, and you'll actually have started property investing. I get a lot of people who've, been analyzing for 1 to 2 years, sometimes more, and then just analyzing. And you always tell yourself and find a reason to not start. So instead, change your mindset, and just have that one reason to start. Whether it's you want to spend an hour longer each week with your family, you want to go on a holiday, you want to increase your affordability, whatever it is, take that reason and use it to start. In terms of special skills, the course teaches you everything that you need to know to get started, right? To run a business and to do it in that sense, that's a different question. As Dave mentioned, I would really recommend speaking to professionals where you are not educated, and learn some basic skills, and then get the professional advice that you need to. But there's nothing overly specific that you need to know to get started. You don't need to have any tech expertise to get started with the automation. You don't need to have a huge accounting knowledge to just get started with the business. You've already received the basic information here in terms of doing starting the business in a structure, and then once you get going, you can deal with the other things, right?
100%. So unfortunately, we are running short of time. I know we've got some other commitments that we need to get to. So if you do have some questions we didn't answer, I know Craig, you had a question that we haven't quite got to yet. We are going to be live again in 2 weeks' time. I'll double check the date for us. So that's going to be the 10th of March. I'll have Robin Booth on again, Andrew will be on, and we'll be talking again about Airbnb, the course, taking the last few round questions. So please do join us for that. If you came in late, there's recordings for this session and for the session that Robin and I did 2 weeks ago. It's on the Facebook and on the YouTube page. But Ridhwaan, do you have any last messages to share with everyone? And then Robin, we'll go to you.
I think again, get the education under your belt and just start. If you are looking for an in, and a way to get started as a property investor, I definitely think Airbnb, and specifically the rental arbitrage, rent to rent strategy within Airbnb, is a very good starting place for a lot of people. It's easier to start, and it's also less risky than a lot of other strategies. So if I can do it, I started with no units, and within 1.5 years, I've grown exponentially. You can do the same, but you do need to start. So get that education and get started. Thanks.
100%. Thanks, Ridhwaan. Robin, any final words?
Yeah, I think it's just reiterating what you and I spoke about, Dave, just before we got on the call live, was sharing that story of speaking to the founder of one of the real estate agencies at a national level here in South Africa, and he was saying that on his books, the traditional long-term renters, the landlords, are starting to come to them to say, we want to consider Airbnb, so please start telling us more about it. So if the traditional market out there is saying, wow, Airbnb is doing something, we want to consider it, then again, it's like, this is legit. This actually shows that there's something here. People are shifting to see the short-term rental as actually a real viable and more lucrative income producing strategy. And of course, as we say, yeah, you want to be on the front of the wave. You want to already have everything out there sorted when everyone else catches up and pushes it along, so that you're just going to totally dominate that, right? And we've been saying that for 5 years now, but it's getting time where everyone else is going to be doing it. And if you're not on it, then you're going to be left behind. So definitely take action, make it happen. And, then we'll see you around the world as, because you're going to have more time and more money.
100%. Cool. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Ridhwaan. Guys, like I said, we're live again in 2 weeks. I've put 2 links in the chat box. For those of you who are curious, not sure if Airbnb is right for you, there is a free course that Robin Booth put together for us, just doing the high level, what's Airbnb and how does it work and is it viable for you. Of course, if you want to get straight into it, Airbnbs. We've been speaking to Robin Booth for twice now about this. It's a good strategy. It works. There's the link for the advanced Airbnb strategy course, and you can go straight over there and get access to that course right away. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Perfect.
We'll be
Thanks,
back
everyone.
again.
Have a good day.
See you in 2 weeks.
Awesome.
Good.
See you in 2 weeks, guys.